Chapter 4: Socialization, Interaction, and the Self. What is human nature? The nature versus nurture debate. Are we the people that we are because of our genetics or our socialization? This debate asks which factors determine individual behaviors and traits. Ultimately, both sides play a role in making us the people that we are. The process of socialization. Socialization is the process of learning and internalizing the values, beliefs, and norms of our social group. The socialization process begins in infancy and lasts throughout the lifetime. Language facilitates socialization. We know that culture is passed from one generation to the next through language and communication, and socialization happens in a similar way. We are often told how to act or behave, which is how language facilitates this process. If people are deprived of socialization, for example, if they are raised in isolation, they may not exhibit behaviors that are typical of human beings. Children reared without much socialization are referred to as feral children, because their behaviors are similar in some respects to those of a wild animal rather than a child. The development of the self. The self is our experience of a personal identity, which is separate and different from all other people. Sociologists believe the self is created and modified through interaction during the lifespan. In other words, when we get a positive response from other people, we might like the feeling we get, and so we will try to replicate that feeling. This might even help to shape our personality and our sense of self. Thus, our interactions with other people may shape our own sense of self. The development of the self. Sigmund Freud is usually associated with psychoanalysis, but his theories have also helped sociologists gain a better understanding of social behavior. Freud developed the idea of the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind, which he believed control most of our drives, impulses, thoughts, and behaviors. It is widely acknowledged that Freud was among the most important social thinkers of the 20th century. Many of his ideas, from the Freudian slip to the ego trip, have become part of the common vernacular. Freud was interested not only in individual minds, but also in the way that mental processes have influenced the whole of history and culture. In Civilization and Its Discontents, Freud explains that individual psychology helps to create social order and is also simultaneously constrained by society's structures and demands. The development of the self. Charles Cooley believed that the sense of self depends on seeing oneself reflected in interactions with others. The looking-glass self refers to the notion that the self develops through our perception of others' evaluation and appraisals of us. In other words, we like getting a positive response from people, so we try to replicate our actions when the response we received was positive. We use others as a mirror. In this example, when we style our hair and we look in the mirror, we wait for the person looking back to say, "That looks good." And then we will decide that we like our style. The development of the self. George Herbert Mead expanded Cooley's ideas. Mead also believed that the self was created through social interaction and that this process started in childhood. Mead believed that the self develops through three stages: the preparatory stage, the play stage, taking the role of significant other, and the game stage. Mead believed that children began to develop a sense of self at about the same time that they began to learn language. The first stage in Mead's theory of the development of self is the preparatory stage, wherein children mimic or imitate others. The second stage in Mead's theory of the development of the self is the play stage, wherein children pretend to play the role of a particular or significant other. The particular or significant other demonstrates the perspectives and expectations of various particular roles, which a child learns and internalizes. The third stage in Mead's theory of the development of the self is the game stage, wherein children play organized games and take on the perspectives of the generalized other. The development of the self. Do you recall playing roles or imitating others when you were a child? Did that have an impact on your current values, goals, or aspirations? The development of the self. The acquisition of language skills coincides with the growth of mental capacities, including the ability to think of ourselves as separate and distinct and to see ourselves in relationship to others. Babies or very young children really don't have a sense of autonomy until they are able to vocalize their ideas. At that point, they want to express their own ideas and want to be heard as an individual. The development of the self. Irving Goffman believed that meaning is constructed through interaction. His approach, called dramaturgy, compares social interaction to the theater, where individuals take on roles and act them out for an audience. As we mentioned in Chapter 1, Goffman was particularly interested in why we act differently in different contexts. The development of the self. Goffman saw social life as a sort of game where we work to control the impressions others have of us, a process he called impression management. According to Goffman, we work hard and go out of our way to present a favorable impression to the people around us. Our appearance, mannerisms, and dress can all contribute to or undermine our performance to others. The Thomas Theorem. W.I. Thomas stated that if people define situations as real, they are real in their consequences. This is now called the Thomas Theorem. Because we encounter ambiguous situations every day, many meanings are possible. The way we define each situation then becomes its reality. For example, suppose you're walking down the street and you witness a woman slapping a man in public. What are the possible meanings of that situation? It could be a fight or spousal abuse. It could be a joke or a friendly greeting. Depending on how hard the slap is, it could be that he has just passed out and she's hoping to revive him. Or the participants could be actors shooting a scene from a film. Each of these definitions leads to a different set of potential consequences. You might intervene, call the police, stand by and laugh, ignore them, summon paramedics, or ask for an autograph, depending on which meaning you act upon. Each definition of the situation lends itself to a different approach, and the consequences are real. Sociologists call this process social construction. Agents of socialization. Agents of socialization are the social groups, institutions, and individuals that provide structured situations where socialization occurs. Major agents: family, schools, peers, mass media. Each of these agents of socialization, sometimes referred to as agencies of socialization, has a different impact on us depending on where we are in the lifespan. For instance, the family is very influential for young children, but older children and adults are heavily influenced by peers. We'll talk more about each of these agents of socialization. Agents of socialization. The family is the single most significant agent of socialization in all societies and teaches us the basic values and norms that shape our identity. The family has a significant influence on children until they go to school. The family is often considered a primary agent of socialization, and school is often considered a secondary agent. Agents of socialization. Schools provide education and socialize us through a hidden curriculum, a set of values and behaviors such as punctuality, neatness, discipline, hard work, competition, and obedience, that teaches many of the behaviors deemed important later in life. Schools are often considered the secondary agent of socialization. However, they sometimes replace the family as the most important agent, as children in school experience socialization from adults and other children outside the family. Agents of socialization. Peers provide very different social skills and often become more immediately significant than the family, especially as children move through adolescence. Peers are often the most influential agent of socialization for older children and adults. Agents of socialization. Mass media has become an important agent of socialization, often overriding the family and other institutions in instilling values and norms. The media is probably the most controversial agent of socialization. We know that children and individuals do learn from the media, but there is no comparable society exactly like that in the United States that doesn't have mass media. So it's difficult to make a comparison or determine exactly how much impact the media has on us. Agents of socialization. Resocialization is a process of replacing previously learned norms and values with new ones as part of a transition in life. A dramatic form of resocialization takes place in a total institution. An institution, such as a prison, cult, or mental hospital, that cuts individuals off from the rest of society so that their lives can be controlled and regulated. Resocialization happens often, such as when we get a new job, enter or leave the military, or take on a new role, like becoming a spouse or parent. Individuals often have a difficult time adjusting to total institutions and will face another difficult adjustment when going from the total institution back to mainstream society. Agents of socialization. These might be examples of behaviors that you would see in a total institution. How are they different than what we might typically see in the dominant culture in U.S. society? How are they similar? Statuses and roles. A status is a position in society that comes with a set of expectations. An ascribed status is one we are born with that is unlikely to change. An achieved status is one where we have earned through our individual effort or that is imposed by others. An ascribed status could involve race or sex. An achieved status could involve a professional position like manager or chief executive officer. Statuses and roles. Our master status is a status that seems to override all others and affects all other statuses that we possess. Roles are the set of behaviors expected from a particular status. Oftentimes you will hear a person being called by his or her master status. For instance, you may hear people talking about that black man. In that example, the description black came before describing the person as a man. Black is likely to be the master status. You also hear things like disabled individual or stupid kid. The first word is usually the master status. It tends to be the status that people notice above all others. The term role continues the analogy of life as a theater. Roles provide a kind of script outlining what we are expected to say and do as a result of a given status. Statuses and roles. Role conflict occurs when the roles associated with one status clash with the roles associated with a different status. Role strain occurs when roles associated with a single status clash. Either of these processes may lead to role exit. Role conflict happens when a person has two different roles to perform and they conflict with one another. For example, if you are a mother and a student, you might have class today and your child might have a soccer game at the same time. You have to choose between your two roles because they conflict with one another. With role strain, you have only one role, which conflicts with itself. As another example, you are a student and suppose you know you are supposed to study tonight. However, there is also a party tonight. Your roommate pressures you to go to the party because that's what college students are supposed to do, and you have to choose. The one role, college student, is pulling you in two different directions. Professional baseball player Daniel Murphy experienced role conflict when the roles associated with his status as a professional athlete conflicted with the roles associated with his status as a husband and father. Role exit, where we leave behind a role we once occupied, is one way to resolve the conflict. Emotions and personality. Though we tend to believe that our emotions are highly personal and individual, there are social patterns in our emotional responses. Emotional responses are socially constructed, meaning they are influenced by social and cultural context. Many sociologists and social psychologists have studied patterns of emotional responses. They find that there are a limited number of responses that people generally give to any particular situation. It is likely that we learn what emotional responses are appropriate through our socialization. Such norms regarding acceptable or desirable feelings in a given situation are called feeling rules. Emotions and personality. Emotion work refers to the process of evoking, suppressing, or managing feelings to create a public display of emotion. Sociologist Arlie Hochschild referred to emotion work as the commercialization of feeling. Have you ever had to engage in emotion work for your job or some other reason? New interactional contexts. Sociologists are interested in interactions that occur in co-presence, when individuals are in one another's physical presence, in the way that modern technology enables us to interact with people far away. Relationships used to be based mainly on physical proximity, called territorial relationships. But we are now as likely to form non-territorial relationships based on common interests and access to technology that keeps people together even when they are physically apart. New interactional context. Postmodern theorists claim that the role of technology in interaction is one of the primary features of postmodern life. We are now exposed to many more sources that help us shape our sense of self than the generations before us were. Postmodern theorists like Kenneth Gergen believe that interacting through technology exposes us to more information and diverse perspectives, which may shape our sense of self and socialize us in new ways. This is another reason why the media is a controversial agent of socialization.